Well, hello, and welcome to the MilVet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world-class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the MilVet Podcast. I'm your host, Beau Higgins. For those that are not familiar with the MilVet is an executive platform that helps veterans or facilitates veterans finding jobs in the private equity and venture capital world. And for companies that are interested in hiring veterans that are in the venture capital private equity world, the military veteran is the place you should look first. We also host this podcast, and we like to share information for veterans that may be interested in getting into these type of opportunities. And I am honored today to be joined from Matt Ibbetson. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you for a quick intro.
Hi, Beau. Good to see you again. Hi, I'm Matt Ibbetson, and I'm a partner at Ridgemont Equity Partners based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Brief overview of Ridgemont. We're a middle market private equity firm in the Southeast. We have about $8 billion of assets under management. You can kind of think of us as growth equity, but we invest into middle market companies in industrials, business services, and healthcare. And, we aspire to partner with our portfolio company executives and build industry-leading businesses.
Thanks, Matt. That's awesome, and we're already got to where you are today. But for our audience, I'm excited to talk about the journey, because everybody's journey from the military, into civilian sector is different. And I really want to go back all the way to the beginning, before your time at the Naval Academy. Like, what was your impetus for getting into the military and going to the Naval Academy at the front end? Was it family? Was it friends? What was the kernel that got this thing all started?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. I'd love to say, I just had this burning desire to serve my country and, give back. But, as a teenager, that wasn't really in my mind. My story is a little different, though. I actually grew up in a small farm town in Colby, Kansas. My dad was a farmer. I had five brothers and sisters, and we were lower middle class. We worked really hard, but never really had a whole lot. And so I grew up working on the farm at a very early age. I was driving the tractor when I was 8, driving the pickup when I was 10. Anything you could do to help out around the farm. And as I grew up, I also worked a lot outside of the farm. I had a paper route as soon as I could. At 14, I was working at Long John Silver's and Village Inn, you name it, and all mowing lawns, all to make money, buy a car. And so my childhood involved a lot of work. Now in retrospect, that was a great experience, but at the time I just wanted to get out of Dodge, so to speak. That's actually a pun, because Dodge City, Kansas.
Yeah, right.
But I just wanted to get out of Colby, Kansas, and so when I was I think it was early in my senior year, this Navy recruiter came along and sold me on this vision. A lot of that vision never materialized, to be honest with you, but nevertheless, it kind of sucked me in. I was hooked. And so he convinced me to take the ASVAB. I did really well. And so then he sold me on this nuclear electrician's mate program, an enlisted program that ultimately I did. I think they waved some money at me. There was a bonus. Turns out you get that bonus after you're done, but nevertheless, it hooked me. And so I enlisted in the U.S. Navy and went to boot camp in Orlando, Florida. It was a shocking experience, like anybody else, that's gone through that. But, I enjoyed the aspects of camaraderie and getting through it. But, after boot camp in Orlando, I was designated to go to electrician's mate school. And but that I was in the class of 9504, but this was in 94, and so I had a few months before school would start, and so I started working on the base in a detail. We called it smurfing because we were doing all this work, and it was the least desirable work you could think of. Picking up trash, cleaning toilets, waxing and buffing floors, you name it, but working all the time. And I'll tell you, Beau, it was horrible. I remember vividly, and I'm going into a little bit of detail because this kind of shaped my career path. But I remember vividly calling my mom, and it's funny too because I wanted to get out of Colby, but then once I got to Orlando, I kind of wanted to get back. But whatever, I was stuck. The Navy had me. But I remember telling her about it. I was probably complaining, to be honest with you. But I remember her vividly saying, look, Matt, you got to focus on what you can control. And you need to do the best you can at whatever you're given. And I know it's not very fun what you're doing right now, working on the base, but do the best you can. And that really stuck with me. And it's been a kind of a North Star for me my whole life. And so, I worked as hard as I could at everything I did. I became the best toilet cleaner. Really great accomplishment, by the way. But you know what happened through that experience is one of the chief petty officers who was supervising that, a guy named Chief Petty Officer Bevins, really great individual, great sailor, great mentor, frankly. He took notice. And that's a lesson learned. Eventually, after a few months, started A school, and I was the first one in, last one out. I worked my tail off. I never really did that well in school. It's not that I wasn't smart. I just didn't have the drive and the dedication, but I had that now. And I really wanted to be number one. I really wanted to be do well. And so I did, and I worked my tail off. I worked harder than anybody, and that's what carried me through. And so I did well. And again, a few days before graduation, I was top of my class. Chief Petty Officer Bevins pulled me aside and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about an officer program?" And I said, "No, I really hadn't, but that sounds interesting. Tell me more." Because at this time, I realized I was at the low of the lows.
Yeah.
And so that it was, very interesting, this opportunity to, become an officer. And so I applied, and he really deserves most of the credit because he guided me through that process. I was ignorant. I had no clue. Fast forward, I went to nuclear power school, followed the same playbook, worked my tail off and did very well. And eventually I got the opportunity to go to the prep school. They call it NAPS, Naval Academy Prep School. I didn't get good enough grades in high school. And so they figured, hey, this guy's got some potential, but, he needs some foundation. It was a great opportunity. I got to play football there and, again, did very well, was top of my class and then went to the Naval Academy. And I tell that story in a little bit more detail just because as a young man trying to figure things out, I realized that you need to do the best you can at whatever you're given. And if you got the right attitude and you work hard, people will notice.
It's a great story on so many levels. And I'm going to comment on a few things. First off, the farm experience. I'm going to give you my personal experience working on a farm. I spent one summer detasseling corn in Seward, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Maybe one of
That's
the most miserable experiences of my entire life. But I did it. I did it for long enough until I said, why am I here instead of New Orleans where all my buddies were lifeguarding? I'm like, this is not right. But I did.
Yeah, you had a machete, right? You're taking the tassels out?
Pulling the tassels, walking the rows and pulling the tassels. I learned more about corn, and it was not the greatest, but it was humbling experience. But it was, I'm not sure. I was definitely not the best detasseler by any means, but I did try my best. So, but I love the things you brought up about a couple things. One, that idea of mentorship that you had at an early age, right? I think, to have Chief Bevins in your life, to be able to guide you and show you the way from someone that was truly clueless, that had no military background, no family, no experience. I mean, you're literally like the country mouse in the city mouse, right? I mean, you came from the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden you're like, what world am I in? I'm sure to have someone to realize the potential you had is huge, right? And I loved your mom's advice, right? Something you can't control what you can control, and be the best toilet cleaner, be the best buffer and waxer you can. I mean, it sounds not glamorous, but that's what it's all about. You can only control what you control. And you see so many people, I think, that just bitch about stuff all the time and that they can't control anyway. I mean, it does you no good. You might as well be the best, maybe it's the worst job, but I'm still the best at something, and that will take you a long, long way. You obviously pick that up at a very early age, not only from working on the farm, but clearly to be that successful, as in your enlisted nuke school training. And then I would think your high school stuff got waived a little bit if you got with top of the class in Navy nuke school. He would show you have some confidence there. But I'm sure NAPS was a great experience too, though. So that is pretty funny. So how's that work? So you finish up NAPS, you go into the academy. And you can talk more about the time at the academy in particular, but I'm specifically, because you had been in as an enlisted nuke, are you already designated like a nuke? Because I know they want you to be a nuke at the academy probably, or did you have a chance to recompete? I mean, you can talk about
I had a chance to recompete.
General,
yeah. So when you come in as a plebe to the Naval Academy, everything's fresh.
Okay.
So everybody's on the same level. Everybody's the same. And look, it's a meritocracy. So everything's dependent on how you do in school and also how you do militarily and academically and athletically. I think the motto is to imbue midshipmen with, morally, mentally, and physically. So, I had an opportunity to go into anything else. The time at the Naval Academy was great. My perspective is a little different. In a lot of ways, it's tough. It's a lot like boot camp. It's you don't have a whole lot of rights, and particularly the first couple of years, you're grinding at academics, and militarily you have zero rights, and you're forced to march around, and it kind of sucks, to be honest with you. But I loved it, and the reason is it's going back to the story. I was at the low of the lows. And so this was a tremendous opportunity for me. The other thing too is, again, kind of you use a farm mouse or whatever, but farm mouse from Kansas, to me, it was amazing. It's right on the water. The history of the Naval Academy and Annapolis, for that matter, is rich and extensive. Look, the academy is beautiful, and there's so many opportunities. I grew up in Kansas where, you'd wrestle, play football, and that was about it. You could run actually basketball and track as well. But I get to the Naval Academy, and there's all these exotic sports. They teach you how to sail, and that was awesome. And I actually ended up rowing for 4 years and really shaped me there as well, which, the camaraderie in the Navy is what, I remember the most. And that's at all levels, all phases of my career. But the Naval Academy, my rowing experience really shaped me as a man. And frankly, my best friends are all former, rowers. And so that was a great opportunity that I cherish.
That's awesome. And again, I have to imagine, after going from the lowest of the lows and going through the enlisted side and A school, and then all of a sudden the academy, I'm not saying it's easy, but it had to be, this is not too bad. I'm sure some people, obviously, that got dropped off on, A day or whatever your initial day is, they were like clueless. And by this point, you're like, oh, I got this. This is nothing, man. I'm not cleaning toilets anymore. I mean, it's not great, but it's a little better than that, right?
Yeah, the Naval Academy is great. I mean, it's a top-notch school, great professors, great academics, really great military mentors. And frankly, your peers, your fellow shipmates are also, great. Some of the best, smartest, hardest working, dedicated people, and frankly, just good people.
Yeah.
I'm really close to all my classmates, both in my company, but also with rowing. And look, at the Naval Academy, I said entering the Navy, I didn't necessarily have the the most noble reasons, but I really developed that at the Naval Academy. I really am a very patriotic person and really appreciate the freedoms we have. And I learned that at the Naval Academy, and I really appreciate that. It's also shaped me. And the other thing that really shaped me there is this notion of teamwork.
Yeah.
It's really all aspects of the military. They teach you that, the Naval Academy especially, and then as a rower especially. I mean, look, nobody ever goes to watch a rowing, like a race. People go to football games, and so you don't do that sport for any kind of fame or attention or anything like that. It is hard work. It's grinding. But I'll tell you what, it's the ultimate team sport. 8 guys totally in sync and working their tails off. And so the kind of bonds you form with, your rowing buddies and stuff is really, really deep, because you're in the trenches for hours at a time on the water when it's cold and rainy and you're wet. So that just further kind of cemented who I was. And it frankly helped me to be successful when I went back into the submarine force on the USS Jefferson City.
I mean, it is amazing, just the foundational experiences of your military time and how much they shaped your life. I mean, again, the idea of teamwork, the idea of being the best at whatever you're going to be, no matter what it is, show up early, stay late, work hard. I mean, it's brilliance in the basics, right? I mean, you learn brilliance in the basics at an early stage, and it builds a foundation, right? I think if you don't have that, and you see that, I see it in my own children sometimes. If you have a shaky foundation, you're not going to have the successful future. But if you can build that early, and it just obviously sets you up so much for success in the future. And I love that you got that, even if, again, and especially even the patriotism piece of it. Well, maybe that wasn't the initial goal or plan that you grew up at age 5 wanting to be in the Navy, but you get that, and it becomes part of your DNA. It becomes part of who you are, and you can't avoid that. I think certainly, especially at the Academy, and just the camaraderie you have. It is a special place, 100%. Having been there a few times, it is truly a special place. I don't know if I could have made it myself, but it is a special place. You can feel it. And I will say, as a guy that I did not row in college, I was a football player, not a very good one, but I did go to the Head of Charles a couple times, and I actually saw some boats once or twice. I mean, I will say,
yes, Head of Charles is a great race.
Good times. Well, talk a little bit about, as you're winding down your Naval Academy career, how'd that selection piece go for you? And I mean, would you feel compelled to go back into the nuke side? I mean, I'm just curious what your thought process was as you were winding down as to where you wanted to take your Navy career.
Yeah, the officer instructor on the crew team was a Marine aviator, really good guy. I was this close to going into the Marine Corps. I actually did Leatherneck and did all the steps. I had performed well at the Naval Academy, so I could have service selected that. It was just always nagging at me. The submarine force had been so good to me. And I had a lot of loyalty, and I just, in many ways felt wrong. And so I went back into the submarine force, and look, you can't go wrong. I mean, I think there's so many different ways to serve and great experiences. But I went back into the submarine force, went through, the same program I did as when I was enlisted, did it again and did well. Was blessed to be able to go to San Diego and get onto a fast attack submarine called the USS Jefferson City, SSN 759. Had 2 great captains that, again, were really good mentors for me. In addition to that, the crew is so important, but we had a great crew, really from, junior enlisted all the way up to the captain. Some of my peers, junior officers, were great. The junior officers that were senior or, older and ready to roll off the boat when I came on, took me under their wing. The JOs I went to join the submarine at the same time were great. One of my buddies from the Naval Academy, a guy named Ryan Fromelt, really good dude. We joined at the same time. And, like I was saying at the Naval Academy, you just had that teamwork mentality. And look, being on a submarine can be a grind. And so if you don't have, a source of joy, it sucks. And I'm coming off the wrong way, but
no, again, it's all good.
that the camaraderie and the time with your buddies, and frankly, even standing watch with really good, talented, enlisted folks. Guys in my division were awesome, and so that the source of joy for me again was the camaraderie. But we, in addition, we got to do a few good, really cool missions. Proverbially off the coast of Country Orange. Yes. We went to the Persian Gulf early, in the Iraq War. And so that was a lot of great memories.
That's awesome. Look, I did 3 amphib deployments, so I can appreciate time on ship. And again, I can't imagine being under the water. At least we can see the sun once in a while. So I get the monotony of, sleep till you're hungry and eat till you're tired. That was a Marine on the amphib. That was what we did. But I get it. And it is when you have that and you see that camaraderie of going through the workups and building the team together, and to have a mission where you really feel like you're doing something, that you're important. I mean, it's a powerful feeling to build that team and get the new crew to join, and go through the workup cycle and then be out there on the cutting edge. There's nothing like it. There really is nothing like it when you successfully can do that, and just the memories you have, and then on the back end of it to celebrate a little bit, hopefully, and when you finish up the cruise, and just it's lasts forever. It really does. It's an amazing feeling. It really is. It really is, for sure. Well, so you did, but what, I guess, sounds like, you were loving your Navy career. It had been a great run, but at some point you decided it's not for me. What was kind of how'd that pivot from, the military into what you wanted to do next kind of start? Or was there a seed that had been planted, or why did you, not that it ever didn't like it, but just kind of walk me through your transition, or the kind of what led to you transitioning out?
I really enjoyed the time in the on the submarine. It was a good experience. I had 2 great captains, Captain Richter and then or Commander Richter and then Commander Cottle, 2 really good officers. I did well also, and in fact, I was blessed to be able to go to UCLA in ROTC. So I was an officer instructor there. I was able to get my MBA. I think the biggest thing is along the way I'd gotten married, and my wife Sandy, great lady, but she, it was really hard on the family for me to be out to sea for, I think the first 5 years we were married, I probably was gone, 2/3 to 3/4 of the time. And that's pretty tough. And so ultimately, I chose family and I decided to leave. It was a really hard decision. I think the other thing too is when I was getting my MBA, there was a guy in one of my classes, a guy named Alvaro Prieto, again, really classy guy from Madrid. And he was working at McKinsey, and McKinsey sent Alvaro to UCLA to get his MBA. And then he went back, worked at McKinsey in Spain. But we kind of hit it off, and so he kind of shared his experiences, and I said, that's awesome. I'd love to do that as well. And so I applied, and I was, blessed to be able to get selected to go, work at McKinsey, and so I did that, and really great experience. Very different business, very different culture, et cetera. But just like the Navy, McKinsey does organization people really well. And so I learned so many. So first off, I was at McKinsey for a few years in Southern California in the LA and Orange County offices. But then I transferred to London for 2 years, and then worked in Belgium for the last year. And so I had the opportunity to, frankly, work all over the world, which was a great experience. But there, it was a good experience to, number one, learn business. I was frankly clueless about business, while I was on the submarine. So that was a great opportunity. Two, I got exposed to some really great leaders in great companies all over the world, and that was so invaluable. You just, particularly because in the military, leadership is a really important thing. So you're in tune to, and you're focused on that. But getting to see that in so many different settings, and frankly, seeing the good and the bad, was very, very valuable. And then the last thing I would say is, I really learned the value of communication and influence. As a consultant, rarely do you have any kind of real authority, but you're required to influence, and a lot of times influence change, and that's a hard thing. And so I learned the value of good communications, obviously oral communications, but also written communications, and so that really shaped me as well. That I think has helped me currently in my career at Ridgemont.
Do you think, or a lot of folks that get out of the military, officers in particular, go back and get their MBAs, kind of as their first step? I mean, do you consider that just like table stakes for entry into the space? I assume it kind of is.
Yes.
Just be able to speak the language of business. Is that fair to say? I mean,
yeah, I wouldn't say it's absolutely table stakes, but yeah, yes. Yeah.
And not from and obviously it worked for you because you were able to leverage your network into a job as well. So you didn't really have, you had a unique transition in that it was somewhat pretty easy, right? I mean, it's probably harder than you're leading on to, but you went from, Navy got you to UCLA. You're getting, you're working and getting your MBA at the same time. You found someone that basically, ushered you into McKinsey. Is that fair? I mean, did you apply other places, or was it kind of pretty like a one-track thing and worked out?
It was one track. Yeah. It sounds, well, frankly, it was very serendipitous. My whole career has been, to be honest with you. But I guess the way I'd frame it, I think there's a great quote. I'm sure I'll butcher it, but luck is where preparation and hard work meet opportunity.
Yep.
And that's very much the case, really, in my full career. Going back to what I said was my North Star: work hard, do the best you can at whatever you're doing. And things will work out, and people will take notice. And so, I did want to join McKinsey, and that was my focus. But there was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of preparation. I had the opportunity to have the inside scoop, knowing Alvaro, and frankly, he coached me a lot. And so you've had, it's less me and it's more of the people around you that help you along the way, but they've got to want to help you.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be a great partner in that. One, just be a good friend, but then two, be a blessing to them, and in whatever way you can. And when you do that just naturally, it becomes easy.
Yeah, I think that's some great points. I mean, it's and I talk about that. You have to be prepared to make your own luck in so many ways. You work hard. If you're networking and you're out there, but to your point, it's giving back. It's not just taking. A lot of
that's right. That's it. Well said.
Networking is not just fun, a hookup somewhere. It's talking to people, but it's transactional, right? You're giving something in the relationship too, and you never know when you may need help somewhere. So just give all the time, and then when you need it, it'll come back to you. So you can't just think. I think some people think networking is this dirty word that I'm trying to get ahead because I know somebody. I mean, networking is building that network hopefully by giving, And then at some point in time, they may be able to help you too. But I think that's the thing. It's not just people have a bad connotation sometimes about that, but obviously there's more to it than that.
Yeah, Bo, I'm so glad you said that. Go off script here a little bit and just focus on what you said. I couldn't agree more. It absolutely applies in networking, but honestly, it applies in all aspects of life. It applies in work.
Yeah.
When, going back to what I was saying, about being a consultant, absolutely applies. If you want to influence people, you got to genuinely care. You got to genuinely want to help other people. And when you do that, you clearly your orientation's towards them, and that builds trust. And so having that natural low self-orientation just takes you so far. And by the way, to simplify it a bit further, same thing in sports. You're either a giver or you're a taker. Mm-hmm. Think about energy in sports. You think about, pick your favorite team, but you can identify the energy givers, and then you can identify the energy takers. And there's two options. And so you want to be the energy giver.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think you're spot on with that. And again, it does apply to more than just networking. It's life, the more, and I say that, I have a lot of proteges or mentees, and the more you give, the more you get back, and I truly feel that. People, it sounds crazy, but I certainly feel it. I mean, again, it's you can't expect, you give and expect nothing in return, but it does come back tenfold. And I truly believe that. And that's, one of these things about these podcasts is like you're giving a little bit of yourself and your time to help others that hopefully can learn from your experience. And it's great stuff. Yeah. Getting back to just your McKinsey time, McKinsey's a big name in the consulting world. I mean, did you feel, I don't know, how military is it? And did your military time help you be successful at McKinsey? I guess I would ask that.
Yeah, 100%. To be successful at McKinsey, you really need to be a team player, and the military is great at that. And so that's one thing. Second, you need to be a hard worker. Just like in the military, you need to work hard, and those are kind of table stakes. And so, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of people, former military officers that are folk that are at McKinsey and at other big consulting firms. And I think it's because of some of the things you learn. And naturally, too, the last thing I would say is you just naturally learn about management and leadership, even just simple things such as project management. You just learn those things at a very young age that shape you as men and women in the military. And because of that, you go into McKinsey and they're like, wow, this is great. And to the military guy, you're like, well, this is just normal.
Yeah. No, I talk about it all the time, as a 23-year-old, lieutenant ensign, you're in charge of, 30 people, millions of dollars of equipment. I mean, you don't get that anywhere in the world, to have that and to be responsible for a team. And, and that's, it's amazing what the military across all the branches, allow us to do, to lead at a very, very young age, relatively speaking, compared to our civilian partners who are, you don't lead anything till you're in your 30s, probably, maybe it's longer than that. So it's very interesting to have that leadership experience to build on, to utilize. And then you add on the MBA, you add on you kind of add it, you just, again, that foundation you've built continues to grow, but it all started with the brilliance in the basics and build it up from there. Well, how you spent how many years at McKinsey? 7 years?
A little over 6 years. And then I had a couple years as a running procurement at an automotive supplier called Lear Corporation. Really great experience. That's in Southfield, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. And then Headhunter had actually pulled me in to go to another firm, another middle market private equity firm. I won't mention any names, but it was a great opportunity. Kind of whet my appetite for this role that I'm in, but I wasn't sure about that firm. And so I did some networking to really try to determine whether I should take that job. And I was offered a job. Um, I was blessed by being the ability to network with a former submarine officer, a former McKinsey officer, or McKinsey, consultant, a guy named John Shimp, who was giving me advice on the role I was about to take. And, we just kind of hit it off. And in the process of that, he said, "Hey, why don't you interview with us?" And so I did. And what I discovered is, one, the folks at Ridgemont had the shared values that I was looking for, teamwork, hard work, the family kind of first mentality, and look, and just good values. And so that kind of sold me. And so I moved the family to Charlotte. That was in 2015. And I've been here ever since. Yeah.
That's awesome. I do want to back up a little bit, because I think if you look at a lot of the candidates we work with at the MilVet, they follow a similar path. They did their time as a JO, went back, got their MBA. Many of them went to McKinsey or worked on Wall Street, Goldman, or whatever it is. It's a kind of a standard path, but a good number of people do that. But the piece I want to focus on a little bit is, how do you make that move into the PE space where there's something about it? I mean, why didn't you stay at McKinsey forever, or stay? What is that? The next thing? What, again, I have an idea of that, but for you, what was the draw to move into maybe a smaller, more, I don't know, just a different kind of a role, definitely different kind of role, but in that PE space?
Yeah. I think there's a lot there. I'll try to be concise, but I've loved every, step in my career for different reasons. I loved McKinsey for the consulting. There's, opportunity to learn about lots of really interesting companies, industries, solve some really cool problems, and work with some great people. I also loved, running procurement. You're in charge. You can really drive improvements yourself. You're the guy. The buck stops with you, and I kind of like that. And I also like winning, I guess. You bring those two together, and that's private equity. And so I had operating experience at Lear, had the consulting experience, but there was this piece that's missing in both of them. You put them together, and that's my definition of what I do. It's kind of simplistic, but what I do is, when I joined in 2015, the mission was to build out portfolio operations function at Ridgemont. And Ridgemont was originally the private equity arm of Bank of America. In 2010, we spun out. We spun out from the bank. The founders of the firm, one, wanted to do that, but two, were required due to regulation. So they spun out and became independent, wholly independent from Bank of America as Ridgemont. And, they raised Fund 1 and then raised Fund 2 right when I joined. So I joined with the Fund 2 raise. We're now in the process of raising our fifth fund. We've continually grown, really great track record. But if you go back to when I was hired, there was some other folks that were hired before, a lady named Laura Farney, really great professional, who started the investor relations practice. Then they hired me to start the portfolio operations practice. So Ridgemont was always looking to kind of punch above their weight and build a great firm, a lasting firm. And I really loved that piece of it. And so I came in, and my mandate was to figure out, how can we create value in the portfolio companies we invest in, and do it in such a way that it was really integrated with our investment professionals, what we call deal teams. And so that was a mandate. And look, there's some bumps along the road. You had to figure out the model, but we did. And, just like everything else, if you're generally a team player, you're looking to help other people, and you're a hard worker, and you got, this base level of intelligence, then yeah, you're going to be successful. And so that's what we did. And, we built this integrated approach to value creation, which I think is pretty distinctive. Like everyone says that, but I really feel like our model is really good. And when we proved that out, then since then I've built a team of 5 folks. We're going to continue to hire into the future. And, as we've grown and we continually build our capability. And so in a lot of ways, it was very entrepreneurial to build this practice, which, I'm very proud of. And look, I all the things I love from past, careers, I still get to do. I get to work with great executives who lead some really amazing, interesting companies. What's even better, though, is it's in the middle market. The way I would describe business, big corporate, Fortune 100 versus the middle market, it's, Navy guy, right? So it's a difference would be trying to turn around an aircraft carrier versus turning a speedboat. It's much more fun turning a speedboat.
Roger that. Well, I get the impression, again, I've never worked in the space, but that there is, in some ways, I think you talked about it, there's no playbook. I mean, you have to be comfortable in chaos in some ways in the PE space. Again, as a guy that worked at Amazon in big corporate, it was chaotic, but there's a structure to it and a way of doing business that you kind of had to follow along with to be successful there. I feel like it's a little more of the Wild West, where maybe, again, I would like to think that skills that military folks bring to the table of, hey, do more with less, figure it out. We don't have all the resources. We don't have a plan. We know we want to get there, but, commander's intent, just kind of figure out how to get there. Is that a fair assessment of what the space is like, that you kind of have a lot of latitude? Like, we know where we want to go, but like, there's not a lot of, it's like, you're going to have to figure it out and work through some chaos.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, Beau. I think Ridgemont is somewhat unique. We're in the Southeast. We're not in New York. And, with our history kind of being part of the bank and then spinning off. And so the building a new great business, business to last, is still fresh for us. And look, we're continually evolving. So I think that absolutely what you described, it absolutely applies for Ridgemont. I don't know whether that's the case with some other private equity firms. Mm-hmm. And so I really can't comment.
Got it.
Did I answer your question?
No, you 100% did. I think where you that does apply for you. That it is kind of we have a North Star of your business. We don't necessarily know, there's not like a exact checklist of do this, and this, you're going to be there. It's every day. It's like, oh, I didn't expect that one, but we'll pivot here and go there. But I think that I like to believe that the military experience is one that the training we've received to be successful in chaos, or to be successful with often limited resources, can apply to being successful in the PE space. That's really probably a better way to ask.
100%. Yeah. And I don't know whether this is categorically so, but in my experience, I think a lot of military officers are able to just naturally take a lot of information. From a military standpoint, you think of the fog of war.
Yeah.
Right. In the fog of war, the faster you can take information, analyze it, decide what you're going to do, and then act, and then follow that. I think in the military, I can't remember. I think they used to call it the OODA loop.
John Boyd is a good.
Observe, orient, decide, act. Right?
You got it.
Yeah.
You're on it.
Nice work, man. But like you're trained that, and I think about. When I was on the submarine and it was officer's deck off the coast of Country Orange on a mission, we were at periscope depth and we really couldn't go emergency deep. And so we were doing a mission, and I can't say too much about it, but pretty important mission. You can't just like take off. You got to finish that mission. Meanwhile, you've got fishing vessels all around you. You're trying to avoid nets because you don't want to run through a net and then suddenly become noisy. You got merchant vessels bearing down on you, and you're there for weeks and months. And so you have to learn that, and it becomes just second nature and it's required for the job. Then you get into the civilian world and you realize, well, actually none of this is life threatening. The pace is different, but you've been shaped to be able to take information and uncertainty and make decisions and then adjust over time. And so if you think about the OODA loop, your speed is so fast. So even if you slightly make a wrong decision, you course correct so fast.
Yep.
So I couldn't agree more. It's an interesting thought.
No, I love that. I mean, I love to bring the, how relevant military experience can be to the civilian, sector. I think a lot of folks that are getting out, I talk to a lot of them, it's a scary thought to get from the military to whatever they're going to do in life. But again, I think to reassure folks that, hey, the skills you have are going to apply in one way, shape, or form. I can't tell you exactly how. I can't tell you your path, like I said, is a different than every path is a little bit different, and the relationships you have, the networking you make is a little bit different, but we all get there. But that, again, the skill sets and the things you learn, the leadership, the discipline, is that the ability to be comfortable and have that information loop that's faster than your enemy or faster than your competition or whatever it is something that's going to set you up for success as you make that transition into whatever sector it may be. That's the goal.
Yeah.
How do you still stay connected? You said you're obviously still good friends with your rowing mates from the academy, and I assume, are you still involved in anything militarily there, or do you have an ER? I mean, I assume you don't have an employee resource group, and maybe you do have some kind of a veteran group at Ridgemont, but you're pretty small. I mean, how do you?
Yeah, we're pretty small. Well, I'm starting to work with you guys. So,
there you go. I love it.
That's good. That's a great organization. I appreciate the mission you guys do. It's really great, by the way. So, look forward to continuing working there. But, I think in addition to that, I obviously hang out with a lot of my friends that are, military or ex-military. I'm a part of the Naval Academy Charlotte chapter. So that's, something local that I can stay plugged into. That's pretty much it. I work pretty hard now, always look for opportunities. So I do, from a philanthropy standpoint, participate in a lot, but, look forward to the years where I can give back more, particularly with the Naval Academy. That's one area. My son is close and I'm kind of pushing him to go, but you got to be careful there because as you can tell from my path, you're likely to not get the right results if you push. So
I get it. I saw my wife is a diehard Packers fan, and I'm a Saints fan. She pushed Packers young, and they're Saints fans now. Like, look, I just laid back and let it happen. You gotta let it flow naturally. You can't be dressing them up in the gear too early, too much. You can overwhelm them. So that's good stuff.
That's right.
Well, that's great. That's great. No, I really have appreciated talking to you today, Matt. And your story from truly, from the country mouse, to the city mouse, where it all started was back on that farm and working hard and getting up early and doing what you had to do, and then taking that into just being the best at things that aren't glamorous, and just the lessons learned that you were able to stack through your military career, through your time, at the academy, on the submarines, at the McKinsey, and to get where you are now. It's a great story and a great arc, I think, of a career. And again, hopefully something that, some of our listeners can relate to and see how, a Navy, enlisted Navy nuke got to be in the private equity space. It's a great story, and you never know. Everyone's story is different. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was a great talking to you, getting to know you a little more, and look forward to continue working with you, and best of luck to you moving forward.
You're welcome. And thank you, Beau. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram @TheMilitaryVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMilVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@TheMilVet.org. Thank you so much and take care.